Developing a long-term illness means a major shift in your life, and adapting to this new set of conditions requires you to change the way you understand, the framework through which you view your life, the way you relate to the world, your identity, your goals, your ambitions. All these sorts of things require a complete overhaul. Now, having dealt with chronic illness for over 6 years now, I understand this well. And in this video, I wanted to share the top 3 Stoic teachings that have really helped me to facilitate this mindset shift. Now, Stoicism and philosophy unfortunately cannot cure your illness, but it can help you to fix your own mindset with regards to your illness. And in my opinion, in general, philosophy is excellent for helping us to adopt mindset shifts that can really have profound impact for the quality of our life. When you understand your experience of the world, whether it's a positive or a negative one, your sense of well-being depends so much on your own subjective judgments, your own psychology, the way you think about your life. Philosophy suddenly has a role of significant importance because particularly practical philosophical schools are all about the lens through which we view life. This lens isn't just some inconsequential fact for people with too much time on their hands, but it actually shapes the way that we view reality and ultimately the way that we view our own lives, and so whether these lives are viewed positively or negatively. Anyway, let's get on and jump into some Stoic teachings. Now, if you are interested in Stoicism in more depth, I do have a course which you can access in the link in the description. For just $9.99, you get 17 chapters, 9 of which are dedicated to Stoicism. I have one chapter that's all about adversity, suffering, and illness. So if you do find useful teachings in this video, be sure to check that one out. All right, let's go firstly with a quote from Seneca. "But my illness has taken me away from my duties and won't allow me to achieve anything. It is your body, not your mind as well, that is in the grip of ill health. Hence, it may slow the feet of a runner and make the hands of a smith or cobbler less efficient. But if your mind is by habit of any active turn, you can still give instruction and advice, listen and learn, inquire and remember. Besides, if you meet sickness in a sensible manner, do you really think you're achieving nothing? You will be demonstrating that even if one cannot always beat it, one can always bear an illness. There is room for heroism, I assure you, in bed as anywhere else. War and the battlefront are not the only spheres in which proof is to be had of a spirited and fearless character. A person's bravery is no less evident under the bedclothes. There is something it leaves open to you to achieve, and that is making the fight with illness a good one. If its threats and importunities leave you quite unmoved, you are setting an example to others." One of the most challenging parts of long-term illness, especially when you're a young, goal-oriented person, is the utter stagnation that takes place with respect to your external goals. Educational attainment, career advancement, fitness development, all these sorts of spheres in which we usually measure our life's progress get put on hold, sometimes entirely. And so you feel, somewhat justifiably so, that you're just prevented from achieving anything worthwhile. And this presents a serious challenge of maintaining a positive outlook and how you relate to the world and your innate drive for a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. But as Seneca says, in such a situation, we aren't entirely barred from achievement as we might think. In fact, the ultimate aim of Stoicism still remains open to us because Stoicism ultimately is all about one's character development. And so the way that you find a sense of accomplishment and goal achievement, even when you can't pursue external goals, is by focusing your ambitions on that realm within which you are not inhibited. Sure, you can't go to the gym and work on your physique. Sure, you can't work on earning more money via career path. But you can say to yourself, right, my goal is to show everyone who ever lays eyes upon me the best example of someone handling chronic illness that they'll ever see in their life. I'm going to achieve excellence by being a great example of handling illness with courage and virtue, of abstaining from just wallowing in negativity and complaint and showing a stellar spirit. Our circumstance of illness essentially gives us, broadly speaking, 2 different paths. Either we can wallow in it, we can see ourselves as a tragic victim and adopt a very negative mindset, always complaining both internally and externally, or we can adopt the champion mindset where we don't see ourselves as a victim or suffering a tragedy whatsoever, And instead we think, great, what an opportunity to show my strength of character. Now I get to play life on extra hard difficulty, and as a result, my character will level up incredibly quickly. Of course, it's not at all easy to face illness this way, especially a severe one or during a severe bout of it. But no significant goal worth having is ever easy. That's the point. It's a challenge. But that makes obtaining it all the more valuable. Now, perhaps you might think that these just don't sound like good accomplishments in comparison to what you previously were trying to achieve. Maybe you had some certain career path in mind, like you wanted to be a doctor, or whatever it might be, and you just think that it doesn't really compare. But don't underestimate the significance of the accomplishment of adapting to illness and maintaining a great character throughout it. Very few people are able to embody the ultimate stoic mindset and virtuous character when they're dealing with an illness in this way. And so if you manage it, then you set yourself apart by obtaining something that such a tiny, tiny percentage of people ever obtain. You get to conquer a mountain that most people never even get access to. Your life is by definition authentic and meaningful because you walk a path that so few people do. Often in life, part of our craving for meaningfulness, for fulfillment, is by setting ourselves apart in some way. We like our goals to be authentic and not just be well-trodden paths all the time. The fact that so few people live life with long-term illness and even fewer do so maintaining positive spirits and virtuous character means that you will walk a unique path in life and accomplish something far from the norm. Sure, it might not sound as exciting as your career that you had in mind, but think how many people already do that career. Think how many people every year achieve that goal. Put in those terms, we get the chance to achieve something even more unique. Okay, on to another Seneca quote. Look at the amount of punishment boxers and wrestlers take to the face and the body generally. They will put up nonetheless with any suffering in their desire for fame, and will undergo it all, not merely in the course of fighting, but in preparing for their fights as well. Their training in itself constitutes suffering. Let us too overcome all things, with our reward consisting not in any wreath or garland, not in trumpet calls for silence for the ceremonial proclamation of our name, but in moral worth, in strength of spirit, in a peace that is won for ever once in any contest fortune has been utterly defeated. When you're living with long-term illness, you inevitably will experience long bouts with both suffering and chronic pain. And the seemingly futile nature of the suffering can lead one into a deep despair. How can life be good when suffering is inflicted upon me every day from the moment I wake up? Now, I've been here personally. Chronic fatigue syndrome renders one in their worst state, usually first thing in the morning, with a gradual improvement of symptoms as the day goes on. You go to bed at night knowing that upon waking, you will immediately be immersed in suffering. But what you eventually learn is that how we conceptualize and understand our suffering has an incredibly profound impact on our experience of it. It's far easier to undergo suffering and pain when we see that there's some purpose to it, when we see that it brings about some good outcome. On the other hand, our beliefs can make suffering far more severe. If our mind is telling us how terrible the pain is, how it's not going to stop, how it's going to do irreparable damage to our body, etc., etc., this makes the entire experience far more suffering-filled. Since the brain is involved in constructing the thing that we call pain itself, the other operations of the brain can be very relevant to how severe it is. Pain isn't some objective, unchangeable phenomenon, is basically the point. And so since the mind and its judgments and beliefs have such a profound impact on our experience of suffering, this teaching from Seneca comes in handy because it gives us a new schema through which to see the suffering inflicted upon us by illness. And this can help us to put it into a more productive and meaningful light. The fighter, as Seneca points out, suffers through training day in, day out happily because they see some sort of final end, some great achievement at the end of it. He sees the suffering in training as building himself. To him, it doesn't represent an injury or damage or a bad thing. It represents him forging a greater body. It represents progress, character development, an upgrade, more strength, more power, a fulfillment of our drive to become greater. And so in a similar fashion, we have to see the suffering inflicted upon us through illness as a means by which we can forge our character if we deal with it in the right way. If we maintain that positive spirit and refrain from complaining or seeing ourselves as part of some tragic circumstance, we too can see it as training for our character development, as an upgrade, as aiding our pursuit of achieving greatness. This could manifest as courage, which would be bearing the illness with a positive outlook, not just indulging in complaint and whining and seeing yourself as such a tragic victim, but instead instilling a bit of grit, a bit of mental fortitude, and embodying what people would call that champion mindset. Furthermore, you can level up temperance by abstaining from just indulging in pleasures and distractions from your suffering. There's no shortage of those in the modern day. You can sit and watch Netflix and eat junk food all day. But if you're able to refrain from these things and spend your time more wisely, your temperance too will level up massively. And if ever you were to get a break from illness or fully recover, well, then suddenly life would feel like it's on easy mode because your discipline would be absolutely overwhelming. If you can avoid pleasures and comforts while you're suffering illness and your brain's just desperate for some sort of comfort, some sort of distraction from what you're experiencing, then when you feel good and healthy, it's going to be absolute easy mode to avoid them and get on with productive things. And so ultimately, if we respond to the suffering from our illness in the right way, then it's material to level up our character. And that's how we have to see it, as a test, as a training ground to improve, not as some meaningless thing being inflicted upon us for no reason. Okay, so for quote number 3, we're going to move on to a teaching by Epictetus. Remember that you are an actor in a play, the nature of which is up to the director to decide. If he wants it to be long, it will be long. If short, it will be short. And if he wants to cast you as a poor person, a sick man, as a king or commoner, the accomplished actor accepts his role and performs it with skill. The essence of this quote is similar to Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, that the hallmark of greatness is being able to love one's fate no matter what it is. Now, the reason I like this teaching is because I personally found it incredibly useful to think of your own life in this narrative sense as a story. Your character arc inevitably has struggle, and it wouldn't be an interesting story or contain any beauty if it didn't. And so regardless of what circumstances we're facing, regardless of what the author of the story has in store for us, view it as your own unique story and character arc and cherish it as such. Just as you can see excellence and beauty in the characters of actual stories despite their sufferings, their failures, and their tragedies, you can see the same in your own life by viewing it as a narrative of this sort. Again, what it all comes down to is that our circumstances are not chosen by us, but at the same time, they're not the mark of excellence or progress. What actually is meaningful is how we respond to them. And the greater the challenges, the more meaning that can be derived by responding to them with excellence. And so for this reason, illness can be seen as an opportunity, not a setback.